My father was a musician, so I grew up with that kind of spirit. So I kind of, in a way, they respected that. I had something to say about music. You know, I knew how to read the notes, I knew how to play piano, so that
you had
really,
a good point of view. You had a strong point of view.
Yeah, I wasn't just sitting there to look nice and to be
pretty face.
It was hard work.
Anita Pallenberg was more than just a muse to the Rolling Stones. She was an actress, model, and cultural icon who left an undeniable mark on the music and fashion of the 60s and 70s. Known for her relationships with Brian Jones and Keith Richards, she became an integral part of the band's inner circle, shaping their image and sound in ways that are only now being fully recognized. Since her passing in 2017, speculation about her life and legacy has continued. Now her children, Marlon and Angela Richards, have confirmed long-standing rumors through a documentary, Catching Fire, the story of Anita Pallenberg. Relationship with the Rolling Stones.
I was doing some modeling in Germany, and the photographer said, do you want to come to a gig? I said, yeah, okay. So we went to this kind of pub, and there they were. And then he says, you want to come and meet them? By then I already had my little stash of hashish that I used to carry around with me. So I offered them a joint. I says, you want to have a joint? No, we can't.
Anita Pallenberg's introduction to the Stones came in 1965 when she met Brian Jones in Munich. The two quickly became a couple, and she immersed herself in the band's world. Pallenberg was more than just a girlfriend. She was a creative force who influenced the band's image and sound. She had an eye for fashion, a deep understanding of music, and an energy that captivated those around her. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards both acknowledged the impact she had on the group, with Richards later describing her as a major influence on their aesthetic and attitude. Her relationship with Jones, however, turned dark. He became physically abusive, and during a trip to Morocco in 1967, Pallenberg left him for Keith Richards. Richards later said he felt compelled to rescue her from Jones, who had become unstable. The new relationship between Pallenberg and Richards would last over a decade, producing 2 children and fueling one of rock and roll's most infamous love stories. Their time together was defined by excess, creativity, and an intense connection that endured despite the chaos of their lifestyle. Pallenberg became a fixture in the band's inner circle, traveling with them, sitting in on recording sessions, and offering ideas that shaped their music. She was particularly close to Jagger, which led to ongoing speculation about the nature of their relationship. That tension reached a peak during the filming of Performance in 1968, where she and Jagger played on-screen lovers. The rumors that something had happened off-screen lingered for years, adding another layer of intrigue to her already complex story. Though her relationship with Richards was passionate, it was not without struggles. Both battled substance abuse, and their lifestyle took a toll. By the late 70s, the strain had become too much. In 1980, they separated, but Pallenberg remained part of the Stones' history. Even after the romantic relationship ended, her influence on the band's mythology never faded. Personal struggles and resilience. Anita's life was as turbulent as it was glamorous. While she was a muse, actress, and style icon, she was also caught in the darker side of the rock and roll lifestyle. Her years with Keith Richards were marked by heavy drug use, and both struggled with addiction as they navigated their chaotic world. The combination of fame, wealth, and excess made it difficult to escape the cycle, and their relationship often suffered under the weight of their addictions. By the late 70s, Pallenberg's struggles became more pronounced. In 1976, she and Richards welcomed their third child, Tara, who tragically died of sudden infant death syndrome at just 10 weeks old. The loss devastated them both, deepening their reliance on drugs as a means of coping. Their home life was far from stable, and as Richards' legal troubles mounted due to drug-related arrests, Pallenberg faced her own struggles with substance abuse. In 1979, an incident shook her world when a teenage boy died by suicide at her home in New York. The tragedy cast an even darker shadow over her life, reinforcing her desire to step away from the chaos that had consumed her for years. Not long after, her relationship with Richards came to an end, marking the beginning of a new chapter in her life. Despite her struggles, Pallenberg eventually sought recovery and worked to rebuild herself outside the glare of the public eye. She stepped away from the excesses of the past and focused on raising her children. Later in life, she pursued art and fashion design, even studying textiles at Central St. Martin's in London. She found solace in creative expression and in her friendships, proving she was more than just the scandals and struggles that had once defined her. Motherhood and family life. Amid the chaos of rock and roll, Anita's most significant role was that of a mother. She and Keith had 3 children together, Marlon, Angela, and Tara. Raising a family while living on the road with one of the biggest bands of the world was far from conventional. Pallenberg took on much of the responsibility of caring for Marlon and Angela, as Richards was often consumed by touring and legal troubles. She tried to maintain some sense of normalcy for the children, even as their surroundings were anything but ordinary. Marlon, their eldest, has spoken openly about his unconventional upbringing. He spent much of his early childhood on the road with the Rolling Stones, often sleeping in hotel bathtubs while the adults partied late into the night. Despite the unpredictability of their lifestyle, he described his mother as loving and protective, even as she battled her own demons. Angela, who was initially raised as a boy named Dandelion before later adopting her given name, had a somewhat different experience. She was sent to live with Richards' mother for part of her childhood, giving her a more stable environment than her brother. The loss of the youngest child, Tara, in 1976 was a devastating moment for Pallenberg and Richards. The pain of losing an infant took a severe toll on their relationship and contributed to their deepening struggles with addiction. Though they remained connected through their children, the weight of the shared grief was something they never fully overcame. In later years, Pallenberg found joy in her role as a grandmother. She remained close with Marlon and Angela, and they have both spoken fondly of her influence on their lives. The Secret Manuscript. Anita Pallenberg spent much of her later years reflecting on her life, and unbeknownst to many, she had been quietly writing her life story. After her death in 2017, her children, Marlon and Angela Richards, discovered a manuscript she'd been working on for years. This unfinished memoir offered a deeply personal look into her experiences, struggles, and the life she lived behind the glamorous image the public knew. It was a raw and unfiltered account, revealing aspects of her journey that had long been speculated about but never confirmed. The manuscript provided insight into her relationships, her time with the Rolling Stones, and the emotional toll of living in the eye of a cultural storm. She wrote about the highs and lows with brutal honesty, reflecting on the impact of fame, addiction, and loss. Unlike the many books and articles written about her over the years, this was her chance to tell her own story in her own words.
I mean, I think sometimes projects can start from a sort of more official capacity, and this was really when Marlon found the pages of Anita's writing that he was not aware of previously. You know, he also knew he had this incredible Super 8 home movie footage and all of these photographs. I think it just started to coalesce in his mind, like, oh, you know, my mother's so interesting, and there's this material that I've now found. It feels like there's a documentary here.
After finding the manuscript, Marlon and Angela knew they had to share it with the world. It became the foundation for the documentary Catching Fire, the story of Anita Pallenberg, a project that would bring her story to life through interviews, archival footage, and her own written reflections. Catching Fire documentary.
I was surprised to see them move into the tiny chalet lost in Villars. You know, I mean, what the hell were they doing there? And enjoying themselves, it seemed.
The discovery of Anita Pallenberg's secret manuscript set in motion a project that finally gave her the chance to tell her own story. Marlon and Angela, recognizing the importance of their mother's words, worked to bring her life to the screen in the documentary Catching Fire, the story of Anita Pallenberg. The film was not just a reflection on her time with the Rolling Stones, but an exploration of her identity as an artist, mother, and survivor. Through never-before-seen footage, personal letters, and interviews with those who knew her best, Catching Fire presents a side of Pallenberg the public had rarely seen. It moves beyond the familiar tales of excess and scandal, showing a woman who was fiercely independent, deeply intelligent, and more influential than history had acknowledged. Those closest to her, including her children, share their memories, painting a picture of someone who was both larger than life and intensely private. One of the most compelling aspects of the documentary is the way it addresses the myths and rumors that have surrounded Pallenberg for decades. From her complex relationship with the Rolling Stones to her struggle with addiction and loss, the film does not shy away from the difficult moments. At the same time, it highlights her resilience and creativity, reminding audiences she was not merely defined by her connections to famous men. Now it's time to hear from you. What's your favorite memory of Anita? Let us know in the comments section below.